All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Jossie Edwards with N&P Consulting, Director of Enterprise West with a focus on technology. Today, very pleased to welcome Kevin Iwamoto with us. He is a good friend of mine, also a colleague in the industry, and travel guru. So wanted to pick his brain today about a couple of different things. One is new venture with Bizly meetings, and then also talk about personal brand. But welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us. Super glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Jesse.
Wonderful. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about Bizly and the groups and meeting space right now. How do you kind of see what's transpired in 2020 and looking at 2021 and kind of the evolution of maximizing virtual meetings? Because we know that in person is going to be impacted. Maybe hybrids will be there, but how are you guys kind of looking at it and trying to create a new normal that is creating ROI for the meeting space?
Yeah, a good question. Thanks. So, we're not involved in traditionally the larger events or meetings that require a lot of logistics. But what we do see and what the data shows is that, meetings are returning in a smaller hybrid format. And so that's kind of our sweet spot as a technology. So our platform, we've made some enhancements to it to allow for, better content. Uh, Creation as well as access to whatever virtual technology platform you're using. We're agnostic there, and just making the experience a lot more interesting than a traditional virtual technology meeting like a Zoom meeting or whatever, because there Zoom fatigue is a very real thing, and we understand that. So our role and mission is to try to change a lot of those meetings, small meetings, hybrid meetings, virtual meetings, kind of bring them all together in one platform that just makes it a much easier and nicer experience for the end users. And so that's kind of what we've been focusing on.
Yeah, I think that's really relevant just right now in our travel space. I think this pause to a certain degree has given people a lot of
Yeah,
time to look at what they're doing from a tech stack perspective,
right,
but also just like go back, look what we've done historically. How can we make this better? And I think a lot of us are really
right.
hoping to simplify things. So to your
Yes,
point of connecting the dots of other platforms that you might be using and consolidating that data into one place to kind of maximize the efficiencies is
right.
certainly something that I've seen with some of the organizations that I'm working with, and taking a look at the platform of Bizly, like really you guys are heading that direction. So it's something I'm excited about. So thank you for sharing that with
Oh,
us.
no, thank you. I mean, thanks for even recognizing it, because a lot of people, I hate to say this, but you still have a majority of people who are kind of waiting for things to come back to the way they were. And I mean, honestly, none of us really believe that's going to happen, because, I think our world is forever changed, just like it was after 9/11. It's going to be forever changed after COVID, even after everybody gets vaccinated, because the way that we engage, even the way companies engage with their remote workforce, those percentages are going to go up according to a CEO survey that was done by PwC. And so what does that mean? It means the less requirement for office space and socially distanced boardrooms and things like that, and reconfiguring everything. So, our world really got a major reset button hit, and everybody's kind of scrambling to try to figure out what's the new path forward. And you've got camps of people who are trying to look at this proactively and problem solve, and you've got those who are like just waiting for things to come back. And I would say to those in the latter category, you may not have a job by that time. So you really need to start planning for this whole new environment and helping your company plan for that too.
Yeah, it's like it's an opportunity to reset, but I also think there's a big need, like really we have to
Mm.
address what the new normal is. And I think to your point, it's going to take a while to come back. But even say in a perfect world, we have vaccines
Yeah,
and companies put the policies in place. There's no way that an individual traveler like yourself or you might be like, I'm okay to travel. And so therefore, if the company is comfortable or the person's not comfortable, there's no way to force it either. So
that's
the
right.
new normal is going to be finding the balance for everyone, and that's going to take time. And
That's right.
during that time, it's like keep ourselves relevant and maximize what we have, and utilize the reset to, I think, pick up the travel industry. We've been a little apathetic on a technology standpoint for a long time. And
Oh
so
yeah.
now is an opportunity to really go in there and find the granular areas to find the finances, the
Yeah.
ROI that you've been looking for,
Yeah.
and make the experience as beneficial as possible for
Well,
your teammates and such, so that they can enjoy it and stick with you. You know what I mean? So you
yeah.
can flourish.
And it's also being brave and, taking a look at things that you've put on the back burner for so many years, like small meetings or, virtual technology and stuff like that. Pandemic kind of forced everybody to revisit everything. And even like your partners, your preferred partners, because of the changes that are happening in the industry, you might need a whole set of new partners, and even processes like RFPs. Like there's several travel managers who are not going to go back to hotel RFPs every year,
Mhm.
and stuff like that, because their program got downsized. So now they're in a position to make the radical changes that they need to do, right? And even your technology partners, who serviced you before, if your process change, your program changes, you may not need the same level of partnerships. You might need a different level of partnership. So it's kind of like, taking advantage of this reset period to take a look at, where we were, but where we are and where we're going to, and then planning for that and helping your company plan for that, whether you're a buyer or a supplier.
Yeah. And I mean, that behooves you in your job and also retaining your job if you're in travel too. Like I need to
Yes.
make myself continue to be relevant and be
Right.
forward thinking, so I can actually deliver on my job, but also make sure that no matter what happens, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, you have a relevance that, companies they don't want to part with, right? But if they're looking at you and they're saying, well, this travel manager or this, salesperson, is focused on groups and meetings, but nothing's happening. So why do we need to employ them and wait for the market to come back? You need to have a relevance and a value proposition and a brand and a profile that's going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm much more than all of those things, right? So you got to think twice before you decide you want to cut me, right? But if you're just sitting around and waiting, I almost guarantee you eventually at some point, your time's going to run out. So,
Yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of people are utilizing the extra time, work from home, you're not commuting. It's the
yeah,
ability to actually grow your own knowledge base and maybe attend some
yeah,
webinars or things that you haven't been a part of before.
absolutely.
So there's definitely a lot of opportunity here. Shifting gears a little bit, Kevin. So most folks have not traveled, over this time frame, and I think a lot are reluctant to. So for you, when you do get back to travel, I was just curious, where do you want to go? What do you want to go see? What's kind of first on your roadmap when you do feel comfortable actually hopping on a plane?
Yeah, so for me, I'm lucky because, I was born and raised in Hawaii. I still have a lot of family there. I have not been there. I usually go back several times in a year. I have not gone back there at all. And there are personal things I need to take care of, and just family and friends that I need to revisit and engage with. And so it's kind of, if you have to go back home, that's really kind of like a double benefit, kind of a nice place to go back to, so you can also relax, but you can also take care of your personal stuff too. So, definitely going back to Hawaii.
My mom lives in Vacaville, so Hawaii, Vacaville. I'm
You
with
can
you.
go back with me, Giassi. We're gonna have a good time.
I wouldn't mind. Um, okay, so here's another good question. I think we're kind of alluding to this earlier about, your personal brand, and I think now more than ever, the book that you wrote that I got a couple years ago from 2016 is super relevant and so
Yeah,
impactful to me.
yeah,
We've had so many people displaced. Your book's called Your Personal Brand, Your Power Tool to Build Career Integrity. And I
yep,
think at that time you were trying to help people understand, every interaction is almost an interview, but you're building colleagues in a community.
right,
But now with so many people being displaced, there's a lot of levers that you can pull, and you need to get to kind of separate from the pack. And so, curious, how you see that being relevant and some key tips that you've seen from people that have pivoted or, found in something new within the travel space. It's difficult. A lot of us want to retain our career here. So what have you seen people do to make them successful as far as getting the interviews and kind of successfully transition?
yeah. So the first thing I would say is whether you're looking for a job or not, you should be constantly thinking about this all the time, right? Your personal brand. There's too many people who've really identified with their corporate brand, and when they get separated from the company, all of a sudden they're at home and they really don't have a brand, right? Because they're associated with that company. So you kind of have to do a lot of self-reflection, and I think that's part of the book. It's like really take the time to self-reflect. Right now during the pandemic, you have to do a lot of self-reflection and you have to be very realistic, right? Like you have to ask yourself, do I want to ride this out? Do I have the financials to ride this out? Do I seek short-term employment out of travel, but it's a position that pays, has some benefits or whatever as I wait this out? Or do I change career paths? The whole, not just our industry, but the whole world kind of hit a reset button, right?
Mhm.
The time to reinvent yourself, the time to really reflect and decide what do you want to do moving forward, this is a good time to do that, because basically everything flatlined. And so now if you're going to make a change, it's probably easier to make a change now than it would be if you're getting paid and you're comfortable in your job, and you are questioning whether you want to take on some insecurity in terms financially or career wise. Those things become a lot more difficult to kind of think through. But right now, if everything's flatlined, you can really do some soul searching and say, is this what I want to continue to do? And if so, I need to be realistic, because it's going to be a while before a lot of these jobs start to come back. And can I weather that financially, or do I need to make other plans? So it starts there. And then once you figure that out, you do what you need to do in terms of education, training, retraining. Look at your current profile out in LinkedIn, your resume, outreach messaging, your social media profiles, any online videos that you might want to put up there, because you need higher visibility than ever before. But before you get that visibility, you need to be laser focused and very clear on what you're trying to get in terms of outcomes from this whole campaign, right? So it's a personal campaign that's elevated by your social media profile, your outreach messaging, your resume, your LinkedIn profile. It's time to update those and kind of reconfigure that for what your new direction is, whether it's staying in the business or leaving the business, because you really need the higher visibility than ever before. And I would say thirdly, and most importantly, is, there are people like you or me where networking is a lot easier. There's a lot of people where networking is still very uncomfortable. And I would have to tell those people, this is a good time to start working on that. It's time to challenge your comfort zone, get out of your comfort zone and kind of move into networking, because networking is going to make the difference between whether you make the short list in hiring on for a job, or whether you just get thrown on a pile of resumes and nobody calls you back, right? So, right now is a time to be proactive and not reactive, and not complacent. So you have to work on your networking. And I've actually had friends who pivoted during this period. They've changed their social media profile, they've changed their LinkedIn profile, they've updated their resumes, they've continued to be very visible on social media. In fact, one of my good friends just got a job because he was during unemployment. He was very visible on social media, and that was part of his networking as well. So it works, but you just have to have the self-discipline to do that.
Yeah, I think two key takeaways. Or actually three would be, I really agree with you right now, taking the personal time to do an assessment of yourself, your skill set, what you're looking to do in this new normal and where you're going, I think is key.
Right.
Two, I think also it's really about, let's get out there, understand that social media is a lever you're going to need to pull. It's the
Right.
same thing as online travel agencies in the early 2010s. The hotels and corporations didn't really want to work with them, but now it's the norm. And it is a
Yeah.
channel of distribution that has to be utilized. And if you're looking for opportunity, that those are certainly free ways in which to build your personal brand. And so maximizing those efforts are there. And then that third part, I think too, is leveraging your network. I think most folks I went through a time when I was sending out applications or resumes quite a bit. And, if you're going in an automated system, the likelihood you're going to get there with the unemployment so high and so many qualified individuals,
Right.
that really your network is going to be the best way to get in. If you have a
That's
first
right.
or secondary connection to someone in that company that can get you to the recruiter, your shot is so much better than it is
Yeah.
if you're just kind of just flying it out there. So I think that three-pronged approach really makes a lot of sense. So
Well, and I would just add, for networking, a lot of people never really had to kind of reach out to other people for help. Like, so and so, I see that you're connected to so and so, and I'm applying for this job. Do you think you can put in a good word for me, or would you be my reference and stuff like that? Some people have a very hard time asking for help that way. And I would say, for God's sake, in this pandemic period, you have to pull every lever that's in front of you. And if you know people like myself or yourself, Giazzi, who are well connected, and you're looking for a position, and you notice through your research that you or I are connected to somebody who's possibly in a hiring position, you are crazy if you don't pull that lever for yourself. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it also speaks to the point of building your personal brand all the
right.
time, so that when you're in need, that person is right there for you. So
That's
it
right.
really comes full circle on that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go a little lighthearted on the way out the
Okay.
door. Give me, a funny or tragic holiday travel or experience, the story that you have.
Yeah, so I kind of had a what I would
Oh, we're
call
going
like a
tragic. I can feel we're going tragic on this one.
yeah, well, it's actually tragic but funny. It wasn't funny back then, but it is kind of funny right now. But it was kind of like it was kind of like I had a 2020 travel experience like about 5 years ago, right? And what was happening was I had bought a second home in Las Vegas, and I was planning on furnishing the home and alleviating a lot of the stuff I had in my Sunnyvale townhouse and moving it to Las Vegas and putting it into the Vegas house. And so I had rented this big van, and I had loaded it up with a buddy of mine, and we were going to drive to Vegas, which is normally an 8-hour drive. Okay, so just so everybody knows, it's an 8-hour drive. You make a couple of pit stops along the way, and then voila, you're in Vegas, right? So if you leave early in the morning, you'll be there before 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So that was the plan. Got on the road, and then started to hear on the news that there's a massive snowstorm, unprecedented, never happened before. I'm like, oh, of course it's happening while I'm driving to Vegas, right? Because to put it in perspective, if you fly to Vegas from San Jose, it's less than an hour. Okay, if you drive there, it's 8 hours, right? So we're driving. There's a massive snowstorm that's about to hit. They were talking about the roads closing, and I said, I'm going to put the pedal to the metal, and I'm going to get there as quick as I can before they close the roads. So we did. We didn't get caught by the police. Almost got there. It was almost like getting to the promised land, and they closed the highway. I mean, literally, Vegas was like literally over the hill, and you're there, right? And so we're in a town called Baker, and it's one of those typical truck stop towns, right? And we had a choice to make. They had closed our road, but they had left some of the other alternative roads open. So the choice was stay in Baker, ride it out, see what happens, and then go the next day, which I wasn't feeling too good about because it's a truck stop town and I have a van full of household goods that I need and I wanted to move. So I said, no, we're just going to go for it. So we backtracked, went to the alternative route, and same thing. Just before we got there, they closed the highway. So now I'm stuck in a town called, are you ready? Needles, California. And I must say the town kind of reflects the name of the town. With nothing open but a Motel 6 and no place to eat other than a Denny's, and having to wait this out, and could not sleep all night because you hear all of these stories about vans getting broken into and people targeting motels and stuff like that. So every noise I heard outside the room, I was like, I couldn't sleep. So then we had to finally hit the road early in the morning because we heard that they were possibly going to open up the road. We wanted to be like first in the queue. So we hit the road, we get there, there's a line of cars literally a mile long who had the same idea. So we're sitting freezing in the middle of nowhere and waiting for the highway to open. And I gotta tell you, it's like watching a boiling pot boil, right? Like, and being, type A control freak personality, there is nothing worse for a personality like that to be sitting in a queue of cars waiting for something that's totally out of your control, right? And then to put a close on this thing, just as it was our turn to kind of, get on the highway and open road, we get on the road highway intersected with the train. And just as we got to the train intersection with the highway, this massive Burlington Northern Santa Fe train came through. And I'm not kidding you, Giazzi. It took literally a half an hour to wait for that train to go.
Oh my
I'm like, well, like what else could happen?
God.
So yeah,
I think you nailed it. That's very much a 2020-ish story. Like, what
pretty
else could
much.
happen?
Pretty much.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time. Nina and Pinta really is excited about working with Bizly, and thank you for your time discussing your book. I think there's so much relevance there. So really appreciate it. Happy holidays to you, my friend.
Happy
We'll talk soon.
holidays to you too. Thank you for having
Cheers.
me.
Pleasure's ours.
Right.